Nobody knows, or you know how to get to it in a blinder. There's a bajillion, I'm using air quotes, ways to make this happen. I don't believe any of them.
I will just say in defense, everything used to transport anything on cruise ships is a little bigger. So, when you're talking about trash cans, you're talking about at its smallest, those 20-gallon big old guys that you roll. I mean, they have, 3 or 4 times that size of things that collect trash as well. So, I mean, all you have to do is get to one of those
and then
bury it a little bit.
And then lift it up and dump it down the chute.
But
there's no, it's not really a chute, but yeah.
But there is that whole question of why would anybody want to kill her?
Why would anybody want to kill her? And then also, you have to have an access key card to get into the dump.
Yeah.
Because, actually, as it turns out, just not every crew member is allowed to dump things.
For good reason.
Yeah.
Like what we just talked about.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll go ahead and say that's a bad theory.
I think so. Besides which, I don't know, you spent time on that cruise ship. Was it filled with unhappy psychotic people, or was it filled with, fun-loving, outgoing types who wouldn't be likely to murder?
Well, it's interesting. I feel like the people who know about the disappearance rates from cruise ships are always saying things like, yeah, it's just drifters and rapists are the only people who work on cruise ships. And I would
because
say...
Because it's in international waters and you can get away with it.
Well, and I would say that it is true that there are a few, but there's 900 people on the crew on the ship. Like, the odds are in the favor that there's going to be at least... But I wouldn't say any of the people that I worked with were psychopaths.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say any of them would probably murder anyone. And you know who to stay away from as crew members. You just do. If somebody's kind of skeezy, you stay away from that person. You know where the cameras are, and you make sure that you're there if that person's coming. That's just what you do. So, which I know sounds crazy, but it's true. I just don't think that somebody probably murdered her. That's silly. Because why?
I don't see how it would pull off.
Okay, the next theory is based on the fact that somebody was 85% sure that they saw Rebecca in Venice.
So
that is that she faked her disappearance, but almost literally impossible because it was a sea day and they searched the entire ship. So she would have had to have some accomplices to not only hide for that entire day, but also to get off the ship, because I don't know if you know this or not, but the comings and goings from a ship are highly monitored, and there are only
because it's a customs situation.
2 ways to get off a ship, and there are security guards at all of those points, both on the ship and landside. It'd be almost impossible for her to just slip by unseen.
Yeah, and don't you get an electronic card when you board a ship as a passenger?
That you have to scan as you have your crew. If you're a crew member, you have the same thing.
What
but you have to
about the
scan it on
passengers,
and off. They don't, and that's how they know if everyone's on the ship or not.
What about the passengers, though?
Yes.
Yes.
Crew and passengers.
Crew and passengers. Everybody has a card.
Yes.
All right, so here's how she did it. So she lifted a card from one of the passengers, or actually borrowed it, and then attached it to a carrier pigeon when she was safely on shore.
Yeah.
And the pigeon brought it back to the passenger.
And it just so happened that passenger wasn't trying to leave the ship that day.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
One of the things I've noticed, though, is that nobody anywhere mentions whether any lifeboats were missing. So I have to assume they didn't do a count, and there has to be a missing lifeboat. So
No.
she must have taken one.
Those are really easy to tell if they're
Yeah,
those are quite obvious.
really obvious.
I mean, if we're gonna, I'm gonna piggyback on that idea. I haven't seen a whole lot about it, but I mean, people would then have to make this kind of a Disney was complicit in the whole thing, and this is a Chesler situation. Did you guys have seen Fight Club?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the boss in Fight Club, his name was Chesler, and it was he got him in such a bad situation to blackmail him to say, you're going to pay me, and you're going to let me go. And that's the kind of situation that this would have to be.
It would have.
It would have to be Rebecca caught somebody doing something so horrendous, and Disney said, well, either you're going to sleep with the Mickeys or you're going to disappear. And they said, okay. She said, okay, well, get me off of this ship. Don't tell anybody, and I'll never don the ears again. And that's insane.
Yeah.
I think so,
But
yeah.
it's on the same level of, I feel like,
She faked her disappearance.
faking the disappearance.
Yeah. I also think that kidnapping is in the same vein.
Yeah,
of
exactly.
silly.
How do you get her off the ship?
Well, not only how do you get her off the ship, but like why do it on a sea day?
Well, why?
Right? Why do it overnight when there's no reason for her to have disappeared? Why don't you wait until she gets off the ship in port,
Well-
or when they're in port and you can take her off the ship. Like,
Well,
where are you hiding
precisely.
her?
I mean, it's absurd. I mean, it's kind of like committing armed bank robbery on a ship when there's no bank there. And I guess that's not a perfect analogy, but you kidnap.
It actually makes a lot of sense.
You
though.
kidnap
Yeah.
people on land.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't kidnap. You could, I guess, kidnap somebody on a ship and then try to smuggle them off the ship somehow, but it really seems like an absurd thing to do.
I'm going to go back to the same question again, though. Okay, so if that's the case, if she was kidnapped, why is Disney hiding it?
Yeah.
If there's
Yeah.
because there is cameras everywhere, and everything is so regulated. Why are they just going? I don't know.
Well, and here's
No idea.
And here's the deal: if she was kidnapped, where's the ransom demand? We can only assume she was kidnapped in order to be murdered. In which case, we're back to murder, I guess.
Well,
but
she could have been kidnapped for sexual slavery, but that's
Nah.
a different story.
That's true.
I
So-
was figuring the ransom demand was pinned to Pluto, and we know how good he is at delivering things.
That he's bad at
Yeah.
it. The next theory is suicide, which I'm kind of willing to entertain, but I'm just going to blend it with the next theory as well, which is it's an accident. So either it was an accident or it was a suicide.
Accidental death or
Yeah, or
I don't know.
intentional death.
Yeah, and I've gotten emails from people about suicide, people that know more about it than I do, you know, and so I don't claim to be an expert on it, but from what I understand about Rebecca, she was pretty happy. I'm sure she wasn't totally happy and cheery every 100% of the day, but
nobody is.
nobody is, but she seemed like she was a pretty upbeat person.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Not likely to be
Not that
suicidal
that necessarily means that you're not suicidal, but
No, it can
Yeah.
happen, but yeah.
Yeah, it
just
can.
seems like she wasn't the type.
yeah. So I guess even if it was an accident, it probably was a bit of an intentional accident given the conditions. And, you know, again, this is trusting that the conditions are what Disney says they were. We've already said that the weather was probably bad that night. And in fact, I've read that the weather was so bad earlier that night that whoever was commanding, I think it was more around midnight that this happened, but whoever was commanding, who was on the bridge, looked down and saw someone down there.
In the pool area?
In the pool area, a crew member in the pool area, and sent security to get him in because it was too dangerous.
Was that the same ship? Because I'd heard something about someone saying I had a friend that was in the pool area when they shouldn't have been in high seas and they had to be rescued and then they were shipped home.
I thought it was the same one, but I could be mistaken.
Well, and I'm
willing to
asking
say I
too
could
because
be.
this is the problem with
I thought
the
it was
stories,
the
that
same
it's-
night even,
It's
but-
always mixed with a ton of personal anecdotal stories. Well, of this time I knew about. So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
well,
kind
I
of-
think. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm kind of wondering too what it's like to, you know, you got a full pool out there. What happens to that water? Does it just all slosh out and then just run out through the scuppers and you know, that's it? Then they gotta
Chlorinating the ocean.
then they got to refill the pool at some
Yeah.
time.
They have a whole ocean to use.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
it's
could really
perfect.
get pushed around the deck by a big wall of water if you're
Sure
out there.
could.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can see why they would take people out of there.
Yeah.
Well, the wall in the crew pool area is
The bulkhead.
Damn you!
Yeah.
Appears to me to be something like 6+ feet high. Would that be correct?
I've heard it's like 10 feet high.
I don't think it's 10 feet. That's why I was saying you should look at the pictures with the people around it. I think it's probably 6 feet. I don't think it's probably 10 feet.
That's why I'm unsure because I've looked at the pictures and I can't get a good guess.
It-
but
I don't know people out there.
But,
Well,
but you,
that's-
you see this thing where it says, oh, well, she probably just climbed up there just to sit up there to look around, and then it was an accident. Something happened and she rolled overboard because of that.
You know,
But again, I don't know how tall it is.
So I think it is. I mean, I think it's 6 feet tall. In that picture I just showed around, and again, I'm encouraging everybody to go find. You can see crew members
Standing on it.
standing on
Standing
the
in the
wall
area.
next to the pool, and then standing next to the wall, and it does look like they can see over it, at least, you know, within a couple inches maybe.
that would actually make sense. You know, it'd be kind of prison-like to have these 10-foot walls surrounding you when you're up there, you know, enjoying yourself in the pool.
And to your point, I don't have a problem with the idea that Rebecca might have climbed up, not the side of the wall, but even more, you know, forward on the bow.
Or even towards the rear, that you know, towards more towards where the bridge is and stuff like that, the superstructure of the ship.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a lot of room there.
Yeah,
But
kinda
you could
slopes.
hop on. So the way that it's set up, again, go look at pictures, is on the bow it's covered, and then it dips down into the crew pool
Big
area.
oval area.
But in right next to where that dips down is these big pods that hold life rafts that expand. But you could hop onto one of those. They're not very tall. They're 4 feet tall. You could hop onto one of those and then hop on to the bow pretty easily. And having been on a cruise ship and drunk on a cruise ship, one of the most refreshing feelings, especially when you're getting a little stir crazy and a little upset, is to have sea wind blowing in your face.
I'm the king of the world.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, which is, again,
We're in that Titanic moment.
that exact thing is why passengers aren't allowed to be in that area. But I don't have such a hard time making the leap of, maybe it had calmed down, maybe the weather had calmed down. Random swells are a thing.
Nice little sneaker wave.
Yeah, it's not so hard for you to be on the bow of the ship and to have it just go boom, boom, down into a little, ditch,
A depression.
depression area, and you would just slide right off, or a ship, or a big wave comes up, or whatever.
I don't know what's typical practice on a cruise ship, but do they have like lighting, spotlights, anything like that? Would anybody up on the bridge have been able to see her if she was up on the bow, or would that have been in darkness?
It probably would have been in darkness.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it probably would have been complete darkness. There's probably some standard minimum lighting in an area that people can easily access.
Yeah, but you
I
weren't
wouldn't say
supposed to be
under spotlight.
No, but you also weren't supposed to be there out there at night. I mean, they didn't lock it off, but you weren't supposed to be in there. So there's probably a little lighting, but there definitely weren't big old spotlights down there that the people in the bridge could have looked down and said, "Oh my God, there's a person down there."
And I think that's a good question, because you
It is.
always see this thing of, well, if the crew had been in the bridge, had been paying attention, they would have seen her if she was in that area. But
Maybe
it's
not.
necessarily.
actually not lit.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've ever been think about, in your car when the dash lights are on, but you can't see your headlights. It's kind of hard to see outside because you've got that illumination in front of you.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. That's why I would think that they would not want to have a lot of bright lights there.
Yeah.
Of course, I don't know what they use. They might use night vision these days, for all I know.
No. But I mean, it's mostly just instruments. It's mostly not you you're obviously not standing there with the wheel or whatever they call it, steering.
Well,
right?
that's the other thing. People are accusing Disney of negligence, but I don't even know if on modern ships if people are actually standing there staring out the window all the time. Anyway.
They do
They're staring at
stand.
monitors.
There are people in the bridge, but I was just about to mention is that that's absolutely true. It's not as though you're standing there staring out into the open ocean. You're in there monitoring, but it is not your job to be looking down, in the front of the ship, seeing, is there anything there? That's not the job anymore.
No, probably you probably are looking at your radar more than
Yeah.
you're looking at your windows.
Yeah.
And do you know how hard it is to stare ahead in the dark?
It's hard. I've tried it.
It's not easy. I mean, it's really easy to get distracted and look around because
Especially if you just had a joint. Because after all, they said something about alcohol. They didn't say nothing about pot.
Well, you can't have it because it's illegal.
that
most
doesn't make
places.
it the most magical
Yeah.
place on earth.
Yeah. So here's a
No.
list of reasons that I think Disney is not lying about a lot of things. Point number 1, they've paid me loads of money to say that they're not lying.
Yeah,
Yes, this
it's-
week's episode is not brought to you by.
Disney.
It's brought to you. Yeah, hey, thanks, Disney.
Yeah.
I mean, no, don't think. No.
Point number 2 is that no one in this Guardian article or anybody that I've seen from Disney Cruise Lines who's been interviewed around this disappearance disputes that it was bad weather. And almost everybody who was interviewed agrees that she probably went off the crew pool and bow area.
Which means that Disney paid them a lot of money too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing that they're really disputing is that Disney probably knows more than they're leading on to, which is definitely probably true.
I would totally believe that Disney is not telling everything.
I suspect they are keeping it mysterious. I mean, they probably have more CCTV of it than they are releasing for a few reasons. One is that they probably don't want to have to answer the hard questions like, is that pool area safe for a crew to be in? Is it safe in only certain conditions? And if it's safe in only certain conditions, why isn't there a fail-safe to not allow people out
Yeah,
there when it's
why is it
bad
not
conditions?
locked? Yeah.
And then, if the weather was bad and it was late, that Disney has sent one more piece of footage to the FBI to be cleaned up, but there's never been any follow-up on that. And so maybe someday we will see something, but I don't think so.
So is that, are you inferring with that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, this is what I'm asking, are you inferring that what's going on is that there was a camera that in a darkened space caught something that could possibly have been her going into that area?
I'm saying that I am still not happy. I'm not satisfied with there not being at least one camera on the bow. And so I think there probably is at least one camera on the bow that probably did catch whatever happened on the bow that night. But since it was dark, it's not night vision, it's bad weather, it's probably not very useful. It's totally possible that they caught somebody walking out there and sitting down and getting swept off. And, that raises a whole bunch of other questions, like why wasn't security watching that at that time? And why didn't somebody call that? But on top of that, I guess there's also a bit of a fear of, if that's not Rebecca, did somebody else go missing? What happened?
Well, but the hard thing for me is that, okay, let's say that there is a camera there. You can't immediately say, why wasn't security watching? Have you ever watched security footage cycle? It's always 4 panels on a single monitor. These 4 guys are probably watching a half dozen to a dozen monitors. I mean, things are easy to overlook, especially when they're poorly lit. You go, it's crew pool, it's black, ignore that. Mm-hmm. You don't know you're looking at something else, something blips by, you don't see it. I mean, like, I'm not justifying that anybody being lackadaisical in their job, but I'm also saying it's the sheer amount of content that they have to be looking at.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. The one liability thing, and even this, I would say, is questionable. I guess they should have locked off the bow. They should have locked off the crew pool when the weather got bad. Of course, I don't believe this. If I was, you could probably bring a successful lawsuit for something like that for negligence. If I was on the jury, I would say, screw you. Rebecca was 24 years old. There was probably a sign there saying, hey, don't go out here in bad weather. She ignored it, but that might be a reason.
I think there's more than it's common sense.
Yeah, there's that too.
Right? Hey, don't go out here in bad weather. Hey, it's bad weather. Maybe don't climb on that really, really wet, slick thing. Don't do it. Why would you do that?
But again, I was on a ship in really high winds, and what did my friends and I do? We went to the highest exposed deck we could, and we did the stupid thing. Yeah. We weren't on the rail, but we just leaned into it. And I had a friend who was at a 45-degree angle. Like, this is so freaking cool. Look at what I'm doing. Wow.
Well, again, I will say I've been on a cruise ship. I've been drunk on a cruise ship, and I can tell you that I had some close calls more than once. I think probably 2 close calls because I was being drunk and dumb and I was young. And actually, again, another reason that this case is close to me is that Rebecca was the same age as me. So we were making dumb, bad decisions on cruise ships at the same time. And I guess I got lucky because I wasn't making quite as bad decisions,
or in the right place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
But people go overboard.
Crew
lot. Or guests go overboard all the time. What is it?
23 a year.
23
on average. And that's just reported.
And that's out of like 12 million passengers a year.
Right, but I think the estimation is that it's something like 15 or 20% are reported.
Mm-hmm. Aren't reported or are reported?
I was going to say part of the problem there is I know that some of the stuff that I've read is that a lot of the numbers that are reported are deaths on board, and there's this whole thing of cover-up of deaths on the ship, and it's not really, as we talked about a little bit before, it's not as wild and hidden, but they make it easily known. This person in crazy seas who was 80 years old happened to be on the stairs and fell down the stairs in wild seas and died. So yes, people die.
They'll have heart attacks or strokes or whatever.
But they are kind of apparently brushing under the rug some of this stuff because Devon was in the minority, which is people from the United States on a ship like this. I know a bunch of the people that I met who they were from a lady was from Slavic countries. Like, this is the best way to make money. It's not that great of a thing, but I come here for 9 months and I make 2 years worth of wage.
I think the statistic for the cruise line that I worked for is that 80% of the employees were from the Philippines.
Okay.
And that's a hugely marginalized group, and they weren't treated particularly well, and that's true. But I think if they're from the Philippines, they're from a low income family, they go overboard. You probably just pay the family and don't ever report it, because why would you? I mean,
Good point.
Again, this is where I sound like I'm defending Disney, and I'm not trying, or
No.
anybody, but
no.
you know what? I understand why they're not saying this. You know who would love to have the luxury that the cruise lines have? Is the airline industry.
Yeah.
We all know when a plane goes down, and